Welcome to Studio A3R. I'm your host, Jennifer Sertl. Here we feature the people and ideas that make us deepen our connection to ourselves, our community, and the world around us. In a time of constant change, I believe our greatest advantage lies in how we connect with others and make thoughtful decisions that shape a more meaningful life. This program is here to inspire you with insights that foster clarity, connection, and purpose. I believe that the antidote to chaos is connection. Today, I'm really excited because I'm joined by Adrian Davis, a thought leader, author, and CEO who has reframed professional selling through the lens of story and culture. Adrian Davis is the president and CEO of Whetstone Inc. and the author of Heroes, Villains, and the Thrill of Professional Selling. With more than 3 decades of experience advising global organizations, wait till you hear this, 3M, John Deere, Merck, Johnson & Johnson. These brands listen to him. He's also a certified speaking professional, a competitive intelligence professional, and actually a very respected authority in strategic account management. And through what he's built with Whetstone, they have a behavior-based learning platform. And as you know, I'm about connection. And what I'm learning through working with Adrian is that he believes that people and professionals that are more connected with themselves actually create more value in the marketplace. He helps sales teams embed strategic selling in their daily rhythm, transforming sales from a transaction into a story of co-created value. He's now expanding this mission through the launch of his own podcast and bringing his insights to an even wider audience. And it is my pleasure to have him on the show today. How are you this morning?
I'm really great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you. So you have become known for transforming how organizations think about sales. I'd really love to know, how did you come to this turning point in your own professional journey that shifted your perspective from closing deals to seeing sales as almost an identity story?
Wow, what a great question. I would say, first of all, I started my career in sales with a mission to prove that one can be honorable, have integrity, and be successful. Because at the time that I wanted to go into sales, sales was seen as something like used car salesman. It wasn't really looked upon highly, but I just thought it was phenomenal. And I really wanted to devote myself to it. As I did that and just kind of honed my craft over time, the turning point for understanding sales as story really came when I was hired by a company out of Silicon Valley. I was based in Toronto at the time, and I was going to be representing them. And Jen, I would be the only representative for all of Canada. So when they hired me, they flew me out to California for a sales conference. And I think it was just instinct. I knew that I'm going to leave that conference, I'm going to come back to Canada, and I'm going to be on my own. So I think it was just instinct. I just asked the different sales reps that I met, my peers, where have they been successful? And they told me, gave me a story, and I just jotted it down in my planner at the back. I had some blank pages, and I would just put the number 1 and the gist of the story, number 2, the gist of the story. And so I came back armed with these stories, realizing that I needed them because I didn't have anybody else. And I just started to weave story into my sales meetings. And it just worked. It was quite magical. But when it really struck me that this is special was when I got a call from our systems integration partner. So they would do the implementation of our software. We would sell the license fees. They would do the implementation. They would make 4 or 5 times the money that we would make, as these were big, complex systems. And so I got this call from one of our partners saying there was a company that was on the verge of making a decision. We were selling mission critical billing systems. And so he said, you've got to get in there. I tried to get in. I couldn't get in. The CIO just didn't want to hear from me. He more or less had made up his mind. And I basically went over his head and I reached out to the CEO, and she took a meeting with me. And when I had that meeting with her and her VP of marketing, I just weaved in a story. The story took me less than 2 minutes to tell, but I weaved in this story of how we were successful with their counterpart in the US. And everything changed with that story. And the saying, big doors swing on small hinges. It was like less than a 2-minute story, but I could tell it resonated. And then I would say within a matter of 3-4 weeks after that particular meeting, the negotiations, everything, we won the business. So this was the 11th hour. We were able to snatch it back. It was, $4 million US in license fees, another $25 million in implementation fees. And that decision it was made in the 2 minutes that I took to tell the story. So that's when it really began to, like, I just realized something's happening. I didn't understand fully what, but I knew stories were powerful. And then later on, as I started Whetstone, I came to understand the hero's journey and the framework and the psychology, what happens when we share stories.
I actually have not heard that phrase before, that large doors are held together by small hinges. Is that what you had said?
Big doors swing on small hinges.
Yes. I mean, that's something I can hear many people talking about that after this, which is so great. What I also loved is oftentimes we think of marketing and sales sometimes being at odds with one another. At least in my experience in corporate America, there was kind of some tension between sales and marketing.
Yes.
And what I love is that the way that you represented the company was so integral. It required a story that it sounds like everyone would benefit from and that you could relate to. And amazing that, well, it takes so much good listening to really understand what is the right story, because you probably have a lot of stories in your arsenal, but to decide the timing as well as the right story, that takes some art, I would say. Thankfully, you've written a book for us, Heroes, Villains, and the Thrill of Professional Selling, where you actually use cinematography to illustrate sales. So how did that framework evolve into the Whetstone's philosophy, strategic selling starts with story? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, very much. And really, life is a story. And so what happened was when I started Whetstone, I went to a professional selling conference, and one of the tracks was on storytelling. And so I thought, I've got to go to this. I knew that storytelling was a thing. And so I went to this track. It was a journalist who was sharing his experience and his frustrations in his career, trying to launch his career as a journalist and couldn't do it. And then he tripped over some old work on the hero's journey, this ancient framework, and he began to read it, saw how it applied to journalism. And in fact, the book that he was reading was about applying it to journalism, and he mapped it out. And Jen, I was sitting in the audience and I'm looking at him on this flip chart, he's mapping it out. And I just had this eureka moment, like, wow, that's exactly what I do. I just didn't have the words for it. And so I basically then started to analyze and understand the hero's journey as a framework. I was thinking of it for sales, but then I began to realize this is life. Our lives are a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. We have objectives, we have aspirations, we have opposition, where we fall into this pit of despair. People come and mentor and help us, and so we're able to get back on our feet and mature. And so I began to see, like, well, this is life. And really, every sale is a story. Every successful sale is a story of transformation. There's the sale, and then there's the sale after the sale. That is, whatever we're promising, we had better fulfill it and deliver. And if we are delivering, we are helping that organization transform and better itself and adapt itself for the future.
And the phrase that I often hear you say is the client as hero.
Yes.
And this is new language. So you emphasize that the client is hero in the story. And so help us understand maybe what are some of the biggest mistakes sales professionals make when they forget this.
Yeah, I'd say it's just one fundamental mistake, and it's just how we're wired as human beings. First of all, the brain is a storyteller. And it's constantly trying to figure out what is going to happen next so that it can navigate the future for us. And in doing that, it always casts us as the main character of our story. In fact, it believes that we are the main character. The whole universe didn't begin until we were born. And the day we die, it stops existing. It's that self-centered. And so it's constantly trying to understand the world around us as a story, which is fine. That's what the brain does. But if now we're in a sales situation where I'm trying to influence you, your brain is telling you that you're the main character of your story, but my brain is telling me I'm the main character of the story. And so what happens is I end up intruding into your story and trying to impose my heroic status on you. And I also carry a big burden now, trying to convince you of how heroic I am, my company is, my solutions are. And what we train salespeople is to have maturity, to realize when you step into someone's office, you're not just walking into their office, you're stepping into their story. And that is sacred ground. And so you need to be very, very respectful when you step into someone's story, and take the time to be curious and understand, first of all, what is their aspiration? What are they really trying to accomplish? And then be their guide. And so instead of be the hero and being the hero, be the guide on the side and try to understand what is happening around them. How is the world is always changing, but how is their world changing in ways that could jeopardize that aspiration? And once you've done that, you've really earned the right to be that trusted advisor, because now you've got their back and you understand how their world is how the changing world is putting their aspiration in jeopardy. And since they can't change the world around them, what they have to do is adapt. And so it's not the fastest, it's not the strongest, it's the most adaptable that win. And so helping them understand what they can do, what they do have control over, so that they can adapt to a changing world and be successful in meeting their aspirations. That model always works. Every industry, every country, globally, we're training people on this. But what I find is when we're doing this training, the big aha is such a simple statement. You're not the hero. It's just people, their minds are blown by this because they realize that's what I've been trying to do. I've been trying to prove that I can be the hero. I don't need to wear this burden. Instead, I just need to be curious, understand my customer is the hero that's being put in jeopardy by change. How do I help them succeed?
And, because this is video, people can see your hands. I almost feel like one of the things that you do is you create space for what's possible. It kind of felt like in quantum physics, I could just see you kind of creating space for what is possible, which I think is great. And the idea,
and if you don't mind me saying, I just love that saying, creating space for what is possible.
Yeah. And
that needs to be mutual space. Like we're gonna create this space together, and we're gonna operate in this space together to navigate the future together.
And I mean, I can see like you have a gift. Like it isn't just what you say, but it's the how you build the trust. Like you're like, I trust you. I'm ready to. I just like, and the sacredness of like, I haven't thought about the act of selling as a sacred act of storytelling. That is a brand new concept that I'm experiencing right now. You can see in my eyes that that people are so afraid of sales transactionally. It often is not given the respect. And the truth is, you're making it a noble art. Is
100%.
Yeah, I'm feeling it. That's amazing. And I also love how much of what you're talking about sounds like co-creation. Almost like neither of us know what the outcome's going to be.
Yes.
We both are mutual. We come with our dreams, aspirations, maybe failures, maybe expectations, but we're going to put that on hold to say, what can we create together? And the concept of co-creation is certainly central to your work. And so can you share a practical example where a sales team applied co-creation and there was an unexpected breakthrough with a client?
Yeah, 100%. In fact, as you're asking the question, I just thought of a client that we worked with recently and continue to work with, one of the largest manufacturers of glass in the world. And they asked me to interview their their customer executives, their top stakeholders. And so we did a series of interviews of their top customers to better help them understand their customers as hero and their customers' aspirations. And so we did this, and they were getting a lot of pricing pressure from their customers. And so we did this series of interviews, and I was able to come back and share with them, for example, there were a few, but one of the themes that came across the different interviews at the time was sustainability. Now, this is not something they were focused on. They were very focused on price negotiations. They were very focused on volumes and setting up these negotiations to make sure they get the higher volumes and the better pricing. And it was very, I won't say adversarial, but there was a lot of tension in these negotiations. And I came and I shared with them, look, here's what these top executives care about. And one of the themes we're seeing across the board is meeting their sustainability targets for 2030. You're manufacturing glass. Glass is so highly recyclable. It outperforms every other packaging material. If you align your capabilities with their strategic aspirations, you're going to position yourself truly as this special resource for them. And so they really took this to heart and did a lot more research and understanding and went into these negotiations focused with the key stakeholders on co-creating solutions around sustainability. It completely pivoted the conversation. And they were able to negotiate, as one customer in particular, just household name, but they were able to negotiate with this customer a massive hundreds of millions of dollars deal that was much better pricing than they would have gotten had they just gone in negotiating, negotiating pricing, and they're sort of willing what they're ready to give. But in this case, they were very focused on let's co-create a strategic solution around your most important aspirations. And it was just incredibly successful.
Wow. I mean, I'm so glad that we're going to be working on a project together because there's so many questions that are going to get me off the script that we have today. But Whetstone, as a company, one is tell me a little bit about the name and a little bit about your goals over time and what success looks for Whetstone.
Wow. Thanks for asking. So I started Whetstone 23 years ago. And at the time, it was in the midst of all these new companies coming up, and every company had a .com after their name or an E before their name. So it was E this or .com that. And for me, it just felt like a fad. And I felt that what I wanted to accomplish was something that was enduring. And so I wanted a name that didn't sound like it was just, a Johnny come lately, that it's something that will be around. And so we did some research. I was working with a graphic designer at the time and just explaining my whole mission and philosophy. And so he was the one that came back with several names. But one of the names he came back with was Whetstone. And I didn't even know what a whetstone was. But he explained to me a whetstone is a stone that is used with water to sharpen edge instruments, swords, knives, any instrument with an edge. And I thought, man, that is perfect. That is just the perfect metaphor. So first of all, I just like the name. It sounds like, wow. It's just kind of Whetstone with an H in it. It's kind of old English. So I liked this, but it sounded substantive. But the symbolism I absolutely loved. So symbolically, a stone to me represents timeless principles. And so the approach that we take to customer engagement and selling, these principles are timeless. They will always be true. Honoring the person that you're meeting with, being curious. These are timeless principles. But the water represents current knowledge. Every time you're applying water, it's like it's the latest. It's like you don't use water from 10 years ago. It's like here it is right now. So this combination of timeless principles with current knowledge to help our customers sharpen their edge. I just fell in love with it. I said, this is it. And so that's how the name Whetstone was born.
And, going back to the nobility, I'm a huge fan of King Arthur and all of that work is always on my shelf. I have a lot of Merlin books and all of that. So
wow.
I really resonate with the ancient kind of mobility as well as the presence of now. And water is such a priceless resource right now. So you 23 years ago had good foresight of something significant that I think is even going to be more significant. And in terms of your goals, like what are, just tell me about what we're celebrating in 2027.
Yeah, brilliant. Love it. So my initial focus, because I was an individual contributor, I just rose to the ranks in sales, very successful. Ultimately, I became a strategic account manager with no training. Just because you're a successful salesperson, you'll now be a strategic account manager. So you sort of figure it out. But since then, and since taking on this role of really teaching and enabling organizations to be effective in their management of their most important accounts, I've learned that this is really a team sport. No one individual can activate the level of impact and contribution that we want to see at a strategic level. It's a team sport. And so our whole shift now is on training integrated account teams. And many times that will include C-level executives. But who are the different internal stakeholders that are going to be contributing to this account? And let's train each of them so that they really understand what strategy is, what strategic impact looks like, Let's train them individually, and then let's train them together to operate as an integrated account team. So this is what we've just launched this whole new program this year, and it is just resonating. People just get it right away. They love our approach. They love to see the impact that we can have, again, functionally and cross-functionally. So this is, by 2027, I want this like really robust and running.
And what I love is that like you help people get intact with their own identity and value before it adds to the group. And that approach, I think, is so wonderful, because I think people are afraid sometimes if they're part of a group or collaborative, they'll lose part of themselves versus gain more of their story. So I really...
Well, what you're saying, and is so important. It's so important, because if I'm the key account or the strategic account manager, what we find happens is the team comes together, but everybody's looking to me for my ideas and my approach, and they just more or less show up as passengers. They're willing to do what I ask. This is suboptimal. What we want to do is make sure that every functional area understands the enormous value that they have in and of themselves. And then to bring that so that when we train them as an integrated account team, everybody has something to contribute. And that's how we get more out of the team.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. I so appreciate you being on my program today, because I know you just took a long flight from Paris. You were at the SAMA Pan-European Conference. First, I want you to tell our audience that is not familiar what the SAMA Pan-European Conference is, and maybe a couple key learnings that might appeal to all of us that you learned.
Sure. So SAMA, first of all, is an association. It's the Strategic Account Management Association, and it really is the voice of authority when it comes to managing important customer engagements. So they are a North American association, and they hold 2 conferences each year. One in May is in North America, and one in October is in Europe. So the one this year in Europe was in Paris. This coming May, it'll be in Phoenix, Arizona. And it's just a place, it's a community where thought leaders, practitioners, all people associated with strategic customer engagement come together to share ideas, to learn from each other, to share best practices, to query each other, and to provide resources for each other. So this one in Paris, I just came back from it, as you said, and a couple of things that really resonated for me. One is the importance of the team. I think in the discussions, as well as one of the presentations, it was about how to implement this approach as a team. And I think for decades, it has been seen as an individual contribution. And now there's this growing sensitivity to the fact that an individual cannot pull this off. The co-creation of value at the level that we're talking about, it requires an integrated account team. And so it was very refreshing and validating to hear that. I think the other thing that I heard, and again, also validating, was the importance of not being product first, not being solution first, but being curious, understanding context, and positioning your value within that context. And that's the hero's journey. So it's another way of saying the hero's journey, but I found that very, very validating.
And what I like is that not only as a thought leader, you do have a frame of reference, but you also have experience, and you're also taking it to the next level. And in it is your co-creation with you have a collaboration right now with Valkyrie, the Summit Group, and Whetstone. What is that collaboration all about?
Very good. So let me just quickly explain. Valkyrie is a technology provider, and they have devoted themselves to creating an environment, a technological environment that supports this work of strategic account management. I come from the CRM days. I was an early evangelist when CRM just started to take hold. And so most people will think, when they think of customer engagement, they'll think of a CRM solution. But CRM fundamentally is transactional. It's based in the transaction. That's very different from the work of strategic or key account management, which is really based deeply in strategic relationships and strategic context. So they've developed a platform that completely is 100% from the ground up designed for strategic customer engagement. That's wonderful. Our partner, the Summit Group, has great thoughtware, great frameworks for customer engagement that complement the hero's journey and support the hero's journey. And then in addition to our framework of the hero's journey, we've built a whole approach to behavioral change, that it's not enough for people to come into a classroom and learn new concepts. Value doesn't happen just from learning new concepts. What happens when you just learn new concepts, even if they're wonderful, what happens is you immediately begin to forget them. And you just go back to your day to day. So we've developed a whole approach that takes these ideas and concepts and principles and converts them into guaranteed behavioral change, which is where value comes from. So the three companies have now come together to take the Summit Group's frameworks, the Whetstone frameworks and behavioral change approach, and embed it into this technology platform developed by Valkyrie, so that organizations have the technology, the thinking, the skill sets to really implement it at scale and implement it consistently.
Wow. And thankfully for all of you listeners, there will be an article written about this, and there will also be a link to the announcement and some resources, so you can actually see what this collaboration is all about and learn a little bit more about it. I'm interested. I work for Circle Optics, which is a 360 camera company, and our accounts are with the Department of Defense. But the idea of really, we have a wall that's kind of our war room of our key accounts that we hope to gain. And I'm interested to see how your approach might help support it being a little bit more strategic, because right now it's kind of cut and paste. So guys, forgive me for saying that. As we're moving forward, you are going to be, you've created a podcast, The High Stakes Customer, and that'll be releasing shortly. I kind of wanted this program to help introduce it so we can create some buzz about it. So tell us about the High Stakes Customer platform.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this because so many executives, they really do believe that customer relationships matter. And they understand the cost and the pain of losing even one of these important customer relationships. But you just mentioned this sort of cut and paste strategy. They don't necessarily understand customer strategy and how to engage these high level, high value customers. And so this is going to be a podcast that's not just aimed at practitioners of strategic account management, but aimed at executives who need to be involved in customer engagement. When you think of sales, Jen, you think of sales, there's a head of sales and there's a sales function, and that's looked after by sales. You mentioned marketing early. There's a marketing function that's looked after by the head of marketing. You mentioned also that sometimes there's tension or conflict between these two functions. When it comes to engaging your most important customers, this is not a sales strategy that you just give to the head of sales. It is a corporate strategy. It's something that needs to be shared, understood, and implemented across the whole. It's a whole of company approach. And therefore, the C-level executives need to understand it, need to support it, and need to guide the execution of it, and to actually use it as input for their own corporate strategy. So we want to make sure that C-level executives, as well as practitioners, understand how this is different than traditional selling, and just have a real clear line of sight as to how they can implement it in their organizations.
I love that. And my hope is that people will listen, on Mondays before they make any calls, so that they can have the right frame of mind before they, it can almost be their prep for psychologically getting into the right space, which is exciting. Adrian, there's so much to build on here. I'm almost sad that we're coming to a close in our time, but thank you for your inspiration, your authenticity, and your real commitment for just the I can't even describe it. The idea that people can become more whole by using your process, and they're better able to contribute. In fact, anyone listening here, just remember, before you take any more calls, before you do any more meetings, think about your story, and you stepping into another person's story, and how can you enhance that person's story? And as you get better at this, may you only choose to meet people that will also enhance your own story, because it's a process to get to that.
And it's mutual.
And it's mutual. I love it. You are listening to Studio A3R. It's actually brought to you by Agility 3R, which is a consultancy that helps leaders and organizations navigate complexity focused on behavioral branding. We help organizations optimize their culture and values to strengthen human capital. I want to thank my producer, Scott Fitzgerald. I'm in his studio. He has rearranged the studio. He has now 3 different studios. His company, RockVox, has been around for 7 years now, and it's so beautiful to see the evolution of the actual physical space. And also, we just love the quality of what you're seeing, the audio and video, which is great. I also want to recognize the organizations that fuel my life and inspire my work: Circle Optics, Go Firestarter, and my clients, Agility 3R, India Osborne, and Laura Schwab. As we navigate complexity, remember, the antidote to chaos is connection. Thank you for tuning in.